Okay, so I think we are live now. I'm Diane Hillary, a social worker and a psychotherapist and intuition coach. And this is Sarah Norris. Do you want to say a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm Sarah Norris. I'm an occupational therapist and a nervous system health and wellness coach, and a really good friend of Diane's, which I'm so grateful for.
Thanks, Sarah. And we wanted to come on today to share a little bit about our religious background and some of the ways that shaped our view of ourselves as humans and women, and how we have explored spirituality outside of that initial religious container that we were born into. So, do you want to go first, sharing a little bit about your religious background, or do you want me to go first?
I'll jump in because I will tell you, like, my heart is in my throat right now. And I think I have learned from myself that what's going to calm me is to face the thing and do the thing. So, spirituality is something that I've been on a winding road with. And in our relationship, our friendship, it's a topic we discuss a lot. And I haven't talked publicly about it very much for a lot of reasons. But I am excited to get this opportunity to share a little bit of my story, and really with the hopes that it will help me feel a little bit more transparent and authentic, and that people have an opportunity to know what I really believe. But I also hope it will help others who maybe had a similar journey and are still trying to figure things out too. Like, I'm certainly nowhere near like, this is what I believe and I'm certain.
Mhm.
So starting the story from the beginning, but keeping it very brief. I am the third of four girls, and my parents were part of a pretty conservative religion. And it was the particular community that I grew up in for most of my formative years was in a very rural area, in a very isolated area. And I have since moved away from that area. I've lived in a lot of different places and interacted with a lot of different people. And I'm able to see now like how insular it was. And in some ways, that made things tight knit, which I really do sometimes miss the community component of it. Everybody knew each other. There was a lot of community support. There was a lot of heart in that specific church that I was a part of. But the religion as a whole, and I think just Christianity, like conservative Christianity in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, was, for the religion I was in, very rule bound. And there was a lot of conforming to an ideal. And this whole idea of like, who am I as a person? I think fundamentally there was this message of like, we are flawed, we are broken, we can't do this life thing right. So we need a director, someone telling us what to do.
Yeah.
And so like that did condone some corporal punishment and things like that. And it was strict. I grew up in a very, very strict and a lot of rules. So things we couldn't do, and a lot of shame around if you chose to do something that was not condoned. So I am starting to lose my trail because this is hard to talk about. So it would really help me if you wanted to reflect anything or ask more questions.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like it was rigid and controlling, and that there was this basis that I also had of you're a sinner and you need to look to external authority to know how to behave.
Yeah.
And were there specific messages around what it meant to be a woman or a girl at the time for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was sometimes a difference between what official church policy was and what was practiced in my community. So I don't really know what the official rules were, but what I do know is that there were very clear roles. The men preached, the men handled the money decisions, the men were in charge, and the women served. And so the women could help with music, they could help with the children, they could help with food. Um, but there was very much like a traditional role of this is what the men do, what men are capable of providing the community, this is what women do, and this is what they're capable of providing to the community.
Yeah.
And I remember from a very young age just feeling like it wasn't fair because the things that I wanted to do were the things that the boys and the men got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to wear really uncomfortable dresses and uncomfortable shoes. And I just remember a lot of body discomfort with specifically like going to church. Um, and my preference was to be like barefoot and dirty
Yeah.
and with probably as few clothes on as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I was wild, or I wanted to be wild,
Mm-hmm.
and being a pretty little girl was not at all um, didn't feel good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably with us. I can feel how, impactful these early messages were, and I know you've been unpacking a lot of them. Would it feel supportive for me to share a little bit about my experience?
Yeah, I need to cool down.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Catholic family. Both of my parents were raised Catholic and went to, my mom at least went to Catholic school and Catholic college. And she had a uniform in college, I believe. And I have letters that she wrote that were like, I just went to my first chapel service. So much of her life story was shaped by that um, religious education. But I think by the time I came along, they were kind of fed up with it and had a lot of distance from it. And so I felt like I was looking for more structure and rules than I was getting. And I found in middle school an evangelical, like what they called a parachurch, like next to church organization, similar to Young Life, but it wasn't Young Life. And I really found a lot of comfort in like when I heard like they had these things where they had different beads. So there was like a black bead that showed that it was a bracelet that you got. And it was basically about a message to bring people into a relationship with Jesus. And the
Mm.
black bead was like, you're a sinner. And then there was a gold bead and a white. I can't remember them all, but basically, the blood of Christ, the red bead brings you towards the white of like the pure cleanliness of Jesus, and then there's a gold for his, holiness. Maybe I don't remember obviously, and then the green for growth. And so I just really was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. I do feel like I'm a bad person. And I think looking back, it probably had to do with like I was very shy. I was, neurodivergent. I had different sensory needs. And so I had the sense that like I'm not getting humaning right. So it makes sense that I'm a sinner in need of saving. And so I just sort of um, dug into that from my own interest, and it was very there was a lot of messaging around um like the men are the head of the family, the women are to be silent in the church was one passage in the Bible that I struggled with, and a lot at all the camps and all the after school things I went to, there was always regular instruction around not having sex before marriage and that purity culture. And because I was in love with a girl when I was 14 and 15, and because of the way we were discovered um, not directly punished, but not allowed to continue to spend time together, I think that I internalized like that made me even more of a sinner because my body was betraying me by being in love with another girl. And so yeah, when I think about the messages, like I feel like that be silent, be a follower, be pleasing, and recognize that you have a sinful nature and you need external saving and external rules to keep you safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Sinner in need of a savior. That was a
Yeah.
frequent refrain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing how, there was maybe some religious context that your family, like your mom in particular, it sounds like, grew up with, but by the time you came along, you were actually searching for more structure and more direction, and how you just happened to find an organization that gave you the rules and gave you the, like, how, what am I going to do? Um, and yeah, as a neurodivergent young person, um, struggling with just figuring out who you are and trying to find footing in the world, I think that is actually something that can be really stabilizing, to have someone say, well, this is the truth.
Right.
So when someone has that certainty, it can be really appealing to be like, oh, thank goodness someone knows.
Yeah. Right. I'm looking for a roadmap and they've got one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to share what it was a little bit about your journey emerging from that? Because I know that's not the religion that you practice now. So
Hmm.
what was that like to find your way out of that?
Yeah. Well, I stayed with it for a while. I went to a Christian college, and that's where I met my husband, and he grew up the same religion that I did. And we were really involved. And he actually came from a little bit more of a progressive background. He and his family had been part of church plants and things like that, trying to be a little bit more, um, I guess, inclusive and progressive in their church lives. So I found that really refreshing when I met him and met his family, because it did feel a lot more accepting and inclusive than what I had been used to. And I felt some relaxation around some of what felt like these, like, just very tight bonds that I was trying to stay within.
Mhm.
Um, and when he and I got married, we joined a church. We found a church after a while that was, the pastor at the time when we first started going there was very philosophical and thought deeply about spiritual things, and was very progressive, and in fact invited me to preach a couple of times, which, going back to growing up, I felt so rebellious. I felt empowered. um, and it's crazy how much, like, it felt like growth at the time to
Mm.
just be given permission to take the mic. um, but unfortunately, I think the religion that we were within, um, wasn't healthy for progressive thinkers, just in general. And so the congregation itself, had some challenges. We actually went through several different pastors that came through. And this is the same time that we were starting a family. And so there was a lot of, um, there was a lot that the church started to feel like it wasn't fitting very well. And I had joined, like, a mother's group at a church that was closer to our home. Um, so when we left, we did finally decide as a couple that we were going to stop attending the church that we had been attending. Um, at that moment in time, I was still very much identifying as a Christian. It didn't even occur to me that we were going to be walking away from Christianity entirely. And with my upbringing, these traditional roles, I was taught, you follow the spiritual direction of your husband. He is the spiritual leader of the house. And I was still very much even though I was having a lot of mental health challenges and struggling a lot with this dynamic, it was just the way it was. So it's a long story, but ultimately, after feeling very frustrated that I needed a community for raising my kids and for myself, and um, pretty much as soon as we left the church we were attending, it felt like um, I felt very untethered. And it was a little bit of a like, I questioned my sanity because I would go for runs, sometimes pushing the stroller with my babies. Um, and they became like a spiritual practice for me. And at one moment in time, I was like, I had this very like, I'm breaking apart conversation with God. It was a prayer. And I thought I heard him speak to me.
Mm.
And at the time, that was something that was like, well, that doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen to women.
Mm.
So it scared me. And I didn't tell anyone. But as this journey unfolded, I have come to realize that a lot of the messages that I was told, a lot of the stories that I was told, were actually intentionally, I believe, cutting me off from an authentic spiritual experience and my own spiritual leadership, my own choice and autonomy and sovereignty. Um, and it's been a long journey, and I am still in the thick of it. But some of the things that I have picked up along the way is I don't have to follow a man. I don't have to follow anyone. Like I can have a personal relationship with whatever entity or being or belief system that I choose.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that's really fascinated me is this idea of just being a skeptic. Um, that's not, I don't think, in conflict with being a believer.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually it's a healthy thing, because true skepticism is admitting we don't know everything
Mm-hmm.
and being open to possibility. And there are some corners that I've explored that I'm like, yep, that's not for me. But there are others that I'm still like, huh, this is interesting. I'm just having fun with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't been like I don't have a conversion story. I stopped going to church, and then I started to do a lot of reflecting and reading and searching. And I've just been following my curiosity all along, and it's led me to some beautiful places. I've been able to experience a lot of healing. I feel like it's brought me to this place where I can actually believe that I'm worthy of love, which was something that for a long time I didn't believe. So it is difficult interacting with people who still are part of the religion that I grew up in, because both sides of our family are still involved in some of them at least.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this kind of like sense that they think I've been lost,
Mm-hmm.
that our family is lost. But my experience has been so much different. Like I've found myself, and I've found healing, and it makes me think of that quote, like, not all who wander are lost.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
don't even know if I answered your question, but I sure felt like sharing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it took a lot of courage for you to find your way after leaving the church, and that you had personal communication with God that felt scary to you because you thought it was dangerous somehow. And and I know we've both really been impacted by the work of Megan Watterson and Sue Monk Kidd. I read Dance of the Dissident Daughter a long time ago, and that was so transformational for me. And more recently, with which that is Sue Monk Kidd's, one of her books about her journey out of more traditional religion into her own more alive personal journey with spirit. And she really specifically reached out to engage with a lot of divine feminine archetypes and traveled along across the world. And that's partially what influenced her more famous book, The Secret Life of Bees. And then Megan Watterson is a theologian at Harvard, I believe, who writes about Mary Magdalene. And I didn't, I grew up learning that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, and Megan Watterson talks about how that was a choice by a pope somewhere, along the way to associate her story with a story of a woman in the Bible. And what is really true is that Mary Magdalene was, one of the apostles. They call her the apostle to the apostles.
Mm.
And she was the one who saw um, Jesus's spirit after he rose from the dead. And she talks about the Christianity we haven't tried yet,
Mm-hmm.
and that the Gospel of Mary Magdalene was, there are multiple copies of it that were basically buried and hidden. And it feels to me when I've meditated with it, like it was such a powerful truth that the world wasn't ready for yet, and that the focus on building empire and needing to raise armies to, strengthen the might or the land grabbing power of these empires. A part of that strategy was that they needed people to believe that there's that in external authority, basically. Like the only
Mm-hmm.
reason you're going to join an army and put your life at risk is because you believe that someone else outside of you has more authority than you. And the truth of, maybe the Christianity that we haven't tried yet, the message of Mary Magdalene's hidden lost gospel that has now been found but still has a few pages missing, is that we have that authority within us to connect with the divine, that we all have the divine within us. And I love how this overlaps with internal family systems,
Mm-hmm.
from the perspective that we have a self energy inside of us. And I've been working with a new internal family systems teacher recently who talks a lot about that being a light, that like I can let my parts just be exposed to the light of my self energy. And that really, I can feel that more, I can visualize that. And so thinking about that divine light that is in me, and really coming to a more of an experiential connection with, I am one with all that is, and that was maybe through some Buddhist practices that I studied. Kind of, maybe I think both of us had like some Buddhist time post Christianity, maybe before where we are now, or influencing where we are now. Um, but yeah, I think that coming into like I was taught that I needed to look for authority outside of myself, and that what my body loved and felt was sinful and wrong, and that I shouldn't trust the longings or the information from my body. And now to realize, like, oh my gosh, my feelings are my compass, like we talked about in our last conversation. Like what my body knows is, is going to be very unique to me,
Mm-hmm.
and is how I find my most aligned path. Only by listening to what's in my heart and in my body am I going to know what's right for me, which is often very different from what's right in the culture, or what's right in the from according to the religious authority who taught me I shouldn't follow the love that's in my heart. So this has been, such a learning from female teachers, and sharing experiences. We've done a lot of meditating together, whether it's in the Tune Into You meditation or one on one. And there's so much I've learned to feel experientially through my own connection with that internal exploration with spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say one more thing, and then I'll ask for your thoughts on all of this, information. But the other thing that I think is true is that this is the wisdom that Indigenous folks have always known. They, in their spiritual practices, have had right relationship with the earth. They have honored the seasons and cycles of the earth. Pagan religions, are focused on, like, their holidays follow the cycles of the earth. And there is an aspect of Christianity that was merged with empire to exert control and to convince people, that they did not have their own spiritual authority. And so even IFS is the founder talks about how it's closest to shamanism,
Mm.
in that it's very similar to the practice of soul retrieval, that when we work with exiled parts in IFS, it's like those are soul fragments that we're calling back to ourselves, which is a longstanding shamanic practice in so many
Mm.
traditions. And so I'm just grateful that I was able to get free of all of that indoctrination. What's the word? Indoctrination.
Indoctrination. Hmm.
I was like, indoctrinization. That seems like I'm putting in an extra syllable. Indoctrination. Yeah. And to find and to begin to be not a survivor of being human, but to experience what it feels like to be a creator
Mm.
based on what I feel and what my body tells me.
Yeah. I mean, we could probably talk for hours about a lot of this. So much of what you said resonates with me and excites me and enlivens me. And this idea, or really, it's a fact that there has been a benefit to convince people that they are broken sheep and they need a shepherd, because they're so much easier to control. They're so much easier to enlist in armies and to convince that they need to um, support governments. It's a lot harder, but it requires so much more integrity to inspire individuals with their own authority to follow you and to believe in what you're doing. Like, that's just a lot harder to do.
Mhm.
So I think one of the things that I have really worked through a lot is just my complicitness to harmful practices and behaviors and things that historically would have harmed my ancestors or just, the earth and humans in general. And how convenient it was to paint anything that didn't align with the values of the people in charge as savage and backward and dirty and wrong and sinful. Um, when to me, it feels like being ourselves and being human is kind of what Jesus was all about. Like, really teaching us that um, to be fully human and embrace our humanity, and I think our individuality is a hugely spiritual journey, and I think it's been missing. So I do love this idea of, well, is there a Christianity that we haven't tried yet? And I also get very fascinated by, like, all of the apocryphal gospels, not just the Gospel of Mary, but all of the gospels that were basically empire decided these aren't valid. Because guess what? Again, convenient. It doesn't fit our narrative. And if the narrative is you need to have one sole leader, a monarch, and you need to be willing to lay down your life for that, I don't know. Like I said, I could go on about all of it, but one question that I keep circling around a lot at my personal journey, politically, socially, relationally, and certainly spiritually, is like, who benefits from this? So this belief, this practice, um, and recognizing, like, how much I have been hurt, I have been harmed, I have not benefited from following a narrative that told me that I was wrong and bad and broken,
Mhm.
and how empowering it has been to be like, what if it's different? What if it is possible? And I hear the sirens going off, like, blasphemy, blasphemy, blasphemy. And I
Mm.
know how much that comes from not me. And so trying to just being like, but what if?
Mhm.
Again, like that true skepticism of, like, can I just be curious about this without shutting it down? And can I think for myself and finish a thought without having to tell myself to stop thinking that because it's wrong, because I've been told it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I know it's dangerous, right? Because people in power don't like free thinkers.
Yeah. I mean, so it sounds like what you're speaking to is, that you, even though it was like many years ago that you left the church, you're still aware that you have protector parts that are loud in your field at times when you're moving towards something that really lights you up or that empowers you spiritually. You still have protector parts that are like, this might be dangerous.
Big time. Yeah. Like I'm waiting to get into trouble for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm asking for it.
Mm, yeah.
So trying to like be understanding of like, I understand that you're here trying to protect me because once upon a time I really could get beat for acting this way or thinking this way.
Mm,
But I am no longer in that container. I am in a different place. And uh, just remembering I'm free. Like in The Secret Life of Bees, there's this beautiful line where Sue Monk Kidd writes, your jar is open or something like that, where it's this
mm,
idea that these bees that were trapped aren't anymore, but they don't leave because they've been so disempowered by being trapped that they don't even realize once that freedom is available to them. And so I keep imagining that for myself of like, I was trapped for a long time, but I really do have freedom. And I still feel like I'm like working with that truth.
yeah.
Um, and it's going to be a process. I'm just trying to be gentle with myself.
Yeah, and I think it's so powerful and so brave to work those edges. And probably because my religious upbringing was different than yours, those aren't my edges. Like I noticed that my edges are more around like we were just talking about me feeling like that something doesn't feel fully aligned, but knowing that my choice might be disappointing someone that I care about. I just get so scared, like, oh, who's mad at me? Am I going to be in trouble? And recognizing those edges for each of us, where we have the parts that are like, this is dangerous, don't go there, um, and how we can let those parts sit in the light of our self energy, of our inner divinity, however we want to describe it, and be so compassionate with them because they kept us safe for so long. Um, is brave, and it's such beautiful work to do in community. I'm so grateful that we have done so much of it in the Tune Into You community together and in our one-on-one times together, because it feels like a lot of times in the Tune Into You meditations, we will do parts work where we will, I'll mention something like, now look up and notice how everyone else in the circle is also working with their parts.
Mhm.
And that feels very supportive to me, to know that when my fear is there, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who has these parts.
Mhm.
And that there's just that mycelial network of the root network underneath the trees, that we can trust that there's support flowing back and forth for all of us who are working these edges and working to expand beyond what we thought was capable or safe for us.
Yeah, and I love as we grow and expand how like those communities may shift and that the what we need may shift. And so having the freedom too to be able to explore like, well, where do I feel like my growth can happen? And I think now might be a good time for you to talk about how Circle Up is something that is going to be your new way of exploring community.
Yeah, I'm really interested in exploring this idea, kind of what we're talking about today about do we have larger, even if someone didn't grow up in a religious community, still we are in a country that has been aligned with Christianity, and there were, the witch hunts, and there's like, if someone, has the ability to communicate with spirits, they are psychotic or they are, and so I think the water that we've been swimming in is filled with even the way that purity culture impacts so many girls and women, even if they didn't grow up with it. Just this feeling that our female archetypes have been the virgin or the whore, and that actually our sexuality, our life force energy, those are all one. Like the Black feminists have been talking about our eros, our creative life force energy, which is our sexual energy, is a part of what gives us, like, it's connected to our voice, to our power. And so having a circle where we can play with what is it, how do I experience my creative life force energy? Do I see it? Do I hear it? Do I feel it as body sensations? And then doing shared practices where we're then saying, like, I felt this. What did you see? What did you hear? And I think that's a playground where we can explore, how do I get information from my soul, from my body, from my heart, so that I can really follow my unique path, so that I can feel most aligned, most joyful. We were talking earlier about, I have had this archetype of, like, it's really hard to be a human, but I'm trying to find moments of joy. And what if I, could follow my inner knowing so much so that I could get to the point where I'm like, I am so lucky to be alive and I am grateful. And that joy is something that we deserve to have access to. And so yeah, I'm hoping it's a place that we can play with our intuition, that we can find a path back to inner knowing and inner aliveness and alignment, and a place where we can feel deeply connected and supported as we explore that.
It sounds so wonderful. And I love how you are following um, your inspiration and your heart and where it's leading you. I'm really excited to be a part of it and to hear how it continues for you. Like what's next after that even. So thank you
Thanks.
for sharing.
Yeah. Well, I know we are at 12 and we both might need to run.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for having this conversation. I really appreciate you.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And now we get to the tricky part of, can Diane figure out how to end the stream?
I
Bye.
believe in you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.